Good morning, Renee, and thank you for joining me to actually share your experience and journey with NVIDIA, where you're working with healthcare startups using AI and ML. So thank you for taking time to talk to me today.
Thank you for having me. It's my honor to be here.
Absolutely. So I wanted to start off a little bit about how did you land up in this amazing role where you are evaluating multiple healthcare startups using AI ML at NVIDIA? It looks like a role that you should be proud about. I don't see many women leading that space. So talk to me a little bit about your career trajectory and how you came about into this role.
Thank you. Sure thing. So currently I'm actually manage more than just a couple healthcare AI startups. Within our Inception program, which is a virtual incubation program at NVIDIA, we now have more than 6,000 actually AI startups across the industries. And within the healthcare space specifically, we have more than 1,000 of them across medical imaging, medical instruments, drug discovery, digital health, and a couple other categories that we categorize in. And my career trajectory, how I landed this job, actually started from being very much into the hardware space. So from Cisco UCS and learning about Hadoop ecosystem, the big data space, to eventually working with many of the close partners in that space. Like at the time, we still have Cloudera and a couple other Hadoop vendors. To now they
Mhm.
have fully consolidated their solutions and built out an entire ecosystem. And along the same time, there are many of the healthcare startups started bringing in their domain knowledge into that space as well. So then
Mhm.
got into NVIDIA doing product management, product marketing for DGX, which is our AI appliance. And of course, hardware is only one small part of that.
Mhm.
The software is even more important. So then over the last couple years, while I was building the reference architecture and the product with an ecosystem partners, we quickly realized that healthcare also one of the largest customer segment of our product. And when opportunity presented itself to lead healthcare AI startups, I jumped right in with full-hearted excitement. And I couldn't join at a better time because late last year when I first joined, no one predicted that pandemic is going to be a thing. And it's a
Mhm.
blessing and a curse in a way because there's so much work that has happened this year and lots of changes and lots of opportunities as well.
Absolutely. I love it. I think you touched upon some very, very important things like how you started off in that Hadoop infrastructure space, because I'm thinking 10 years ago, like the wave, right? The cloud hit, then everybody's talking about big data. But it's very important to know like Hadoop and Cloudera, they sort of laid the foundation for AI because if you didn't have the big data infrastructure, you cannot collate the data that you need for the machine learning algorithms. And obviously, a good point you touched upon is the pandemic is providing both opportunities as well as missed opportunities for some. So that's a very interesting note, especially in the healthcare startup world. So tell me a little bit about in this role where you're evaluating healthcare startups using AI ML, what are you seeing now during the pandemic? Are there any interesting startups? Because there were like 6,000 startups across industries and 1,000 in healthcare. That's a lot. But is there something that's sticking out to you as examples you can talk about?
Yes, absolutely. I will give you one example specifically. Whiteboard Coordinator is a startup based in Chicago, and in the US, they are quickly expanding. And earlier this year, they were closing millions of dollars on a weekly basis because of the
Wow.
need for their solution in the healthcare space specifically.
Hmm.
So I will categorize them in the digital health area because they're providing software platforms and software solutions to be able to help hospitals to most efficiently manage their systems. So for example, they are currently actually doing quite a lot of use cases, like including things like telemonitoring, telesitting, or like ambulatory clinical efficiency, operating room efficiency, and thermal screening. I remember in May, we wrote a blog post about them. At the time, they were actually getting their thermal screening solution fully automated during that
Mm-hmm.
time, and they were able to just within a quick 10 days get the solutions up and running and installed at 31 entrance of the hospitals, and then be able to screen like 6,000 people coming in and out, and automatically detect either the patient's or staff temperature to help reduce the staff burnout essentially. So that was like one of the key use case. And fairly recently, they also have started deploying a lot of what they call a kind of virtual nurse and virtual patient assistant. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of for the COVID patient to have to be in the COVID ward by themselves, or even ask simple question and wait 4 to 5 hours for the dedicated nurse to come in, or
Mm-hmm.
not come in that case because it's
Mm-hmm.
contagious, right? Now they can actually talk to an AI system. So they can get, simple questions like when is my surgery answers right out of the gate within several seconds of delay instead of hours of delay to come later. So solutions like that has been quite transformational in the healthcare industries. There's definitely some that we saw, sort of dying down, but then many of them either are seeing the tremendous uptick and are trying to quickly ramp up and scale, or some other ones are trying to quickly pivot their solution and include a healthcare solution within their offerings as well.
So looks like everybody is catering towards how do you do a high touch virtual meeting, because you want to reduce the person to person contact. At the same time, we want to make sure we give that dedicated service to the patient as well. So looks like an amazing startup.
Yes.
And
And
anything of note internationally? I know you've mentioned all over the world, and I know that in US most startups get more funding, but I wanted to see if you have any interesting anecdotes internationally as well.
right, internationally, we definitely have seen a lot. For example, Oaken is another startup that are currently doing federated learning for digital health, and they participated in the Melody project, which is part of the pharmaceutical initiatives. And they also fairly recently contributed to the MONAI, which is a open source for medical imaging project and initiative, and they also
Mhm.
contribute to that. So for a company like Oaken, that this year they also got quite a large amount of funding that came in. Is quite many startups like them that we started to see, of course, the drug discovery space taken off. Like in fact, one of the data point that I saw was like even in Q3 alone, there were like 38 some deals and nearly about like $1.5 billion funding in that just the drug discovery space itself. And for you mentioned about global, right? So like Xtapi is another one, and also Taimei. They're both more in the Asia area, and in the Q3 alone, they were raising like $319 million and $176 million of rounds of funding. So yeah, the amount of funding that's coming in for the drug discovery space is tremendous, and we have definitely seen that taken off across the globe for sure.
And that's not surprising given the fact the entire world is waiting with bated breath about when the vaccine would come out. So anything to expedite the drug discovery is getting, you said, nearly $300 million in funding. That's amazing.
Yes.
Um, and I wanted to know a little bit about how NVIDIA is actually helping the startup ecosystem itself.
Yeah, of course. So what our Inception program essentially offer three things. The first one is what we called kind of the technical support. So essentially think that if you need help optimize one of your models to be able to better detect temperature or your heart rate, we have dedicated solution architects for startups themselves. Or if you just want to better understand what does NVIDIA Clara as an application framework in healthcare actually offers, what are some of the free resources be able to speed up your development, or sometimes which GPU is actually the best. Do I
Mm-hmm.
embedded GPU or do I buy a big GPU in the data center, right? So we are there as like your trusted advisor essentially to provide a technical support. And the second part actually comes in from a lot of the educational side of the things. So for example, we have Deep Learning Institute, which is a curriculum that we put together for free for the startups to take.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many other discounts. There's a lot of other discounts to essentially get GPUs either in the cloud or on-prem in
Mm-hmm.
this education bucket. And the last but not least is a lot of go-to-market support as well. So go-to-market support, it includes, marketing their solution to the like-minded industries or to the right CXOs in the hospitals that they actually don't have access to, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes partnering up with large healthcare giants like GE, Siemens, or other venture teams to be
Mm-hmm.
help further their acceleration in the market. So those are essentially the top three things that we do offer for the startups, and we welcome many of the startups in this ecosystem to join us. We're here to accelerate the development adoption of AI across the board.
That is exciting. I think for all those people who have startup ideas, they should be aware that NVIDIA is doing so much to lift them up and also provide these resources that you mentioned, which cost actually millions of dollars, because I've worked on projects that we do need that heavy processing power, especially image analysis and things like that. So that's amazing. I'm super excited that you are involved in uplifting all the startups. So and
Thank
especially in
you.
healthcare, which we all
And
need. Go ahead.
exactly. And just to even bring that point home a little bit, like for example, the Atomwise is a startup in the US doing drug discovery. And they created this model called the AtomNet model, which
Mm-hmm.
essentially is using like the convolutional neural network, CNN,
Mm-hmm.
for drug discovery. And because they were running on top of NVIDIA GPUs, what used to take like months, if not years, to be able to simulate the small molecules now actually takes less than 2 days. So the speed up like from years to 2 days is tremendous. And that
Mm-hmm.
enables not just startups, but many of the researchers in the space to be able to do their lifetimes of work within a week or a couple of days. So that's definitely great results that we have seen in this ecosystem. And we wake up every day to support the Einsteins of our time, essentially.
That's a good catchphrase. I like that, Einstein's of our time. But I think you focused on a very brilliant point there that are known to a lot of the common people. It's like in order to process some of these research in molecular biology, you do need that heavy infrastructure at the back end because you're crunching millions and millions of data points, and you do need that speed is of essence again, as the world is waiting for faster clinical trials as well as drug discovery. So I'm super thrilled that NVIDIA is doing their best to support the drug discovery process as well. And lastly, what are some of the trends you're observing? I know most of it is related to the pandemic and drug discovery and things of that nature, but what other trends are you observing in the startup space as you're talking about 6,000 plus startups? That's a lot. And I'm sure there are patterns and trends you've been observing.
Of course, I will touch on three areas. Number one, from the funding side. Number two, where the market is going. Number three, kind of on the technical side a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
From the funding side, I was quite frankly a little surprised because I thought, pandemic's going to wipe out quite a lot of healthcare AI startups. But in fact, in Q3, I think startups are just so savvy to be able to pivot their solutions to find a niche that they can support this pandemic. And in fact, the healthcare AI companies have actually raised like $2.1 billion in equity funding across like more than 121 deals just in Q3 alone. And that actually is a quarterly uptick of 37%. And that actually has reached like a record high in the entire 2020. So I was not seeing the trend going up and then down because of the pandemic effect. But yeah, that's really heartwarming to see that many of the investors are continue to provide their support in this ecosystem. So that's from the funding side. And of course, among a lot of the healthcare AI deals, digital health, telehealth, medical devices, drug discoveries are some of the top ones to watch in that space. From the market side of things, and we definitely have seen a lot more like machine learning and AI adoption into the hospital and clinic environment to be able to reduce staff burnout, like I mentioned earlier, reduce
Mm-hmm.
time to find drug candidates, and be able to build out also like automatic recommendation system and
Mm-hmm.
SaaS platform to either, provide the right drugs or be able to view insights and things like that. And last but not least, from the technical side, it's interesting and not surprising to see a lot of explainable AI and privacy preserve, automatically desensitize patient data AI solutions to come online, and also be able to use emotional AI to supporting mental health in the pandemic during the pandemic. And last but not least, using similar technologies like federated learning to be able to share centralized model to preserve patient data and continue to gain insights for the entire ecosystem as a whole. So those are kind of the top three trends that both from the funding side, the market side, and the technical side that I'm seeing within the work that I'm doing.
That is really helpful. And you mentioned $2.1 billion with a B, which is indeed surprising given the current situation, but looks like we do need more of the healthcare startups to help us get out of this pandemic. And the other thing that really thrilled me was the fact that there is an emphasis on privacy and security and explainable AI, because while as a data scientist, I'm excited about the adoption of AI in healthcare, I'm also very cautious about all these healthcare data, because you should be very cognizant about HIPAA and privacy when it comes to healthcare data. So I'm super thrilled that there is emphasis on that, as well as I am hearing that the federated learning is increasingly being adopted as well. So super excited about all the trends that you spoke about. And any last words for healthcare or any other startups that want to get your help in your AI ecosystem?
Sure thing. Either apply to NVIDIA Inception right away, just find it on Google or LinkedIn me. Happy to help out in any way. And do reach out, because we, as large companies, are here to support your effort. We provide a lot of free resources. Only ask, right? Sometimes if you don't ask, then you don't get. So please ask us how we can help you guys. And we're here to ensure you accelerate your AI development and deployment for this healthcare ecosystem.
That's awesome. And I will put all the resource links in this interview notes as well. And so thank you so much, Renee, for all the good work you're doing. I'm sure you'll continue to do that and support just the AI ecosystem. And thank you again for taking time to talk to me today.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.